Hey, everybody. There we go. Every time I do this, I feel like it's a little bit different. I'm not sure if that's just me or if that's if Facebook is revamping things. I know a ton of people are doing lives right now. So many like free concerts and entertainment and instruction that it's really cool. So, today, we're going to work on painting clouds, and I'm excited about that because this was an area where I really struggled early on, and I just longed to paint clouds. I mean, skies are blue and white, it's my palette. I feel like they're soothing and relaxing. They're a great subject matter to paint. And so we're going to work on that today together. Hopefully, we'll do a couple of different studies so we can try some different techniques. And we've got people coming in from New York and Jacksonville, Alberta. I'm assuming that's in Canada, unless there's like an Alberta, Ohio, which there might be. Um, we're going to use the same colors and brushes that we've been using. And I'm going to stick with that palette just to try to make things simpler. And actually, I have everything but my palette. I got it already and then I put it up so my cats don't get it. So, well, they don't like step in it. Hang on just a second. Let me grab my palette. Okay, got my palette. And I'll do a little bit of show and tell first, and then we'll get painting. So, the first thing when you're painting clouds that I would encourage you to do is pay attention to clouds. Observe them. I have so many pictures saved on my phone of clouds when I'm out on walks, and I'll show you just kind of some of them. There were some really beautiful clouds that were happening just a couple of days ago when I was out on my walk. And I try to crop them and think about like, how would I paint this? And it's interesting how this was the same day, same time. And when you shoot clouds that the sun is shining on versus clouds that the sun is shining behind them, so they're backlit. So there's all sorts of different cloud shapes, colors, types. I mean, it can run the gambit. So really observing clouds is going to help improve your cloud paintings. And I'm seeing a lot of people come in, Massachusetts, New Jersey, the Colt's Neck of MJ. Is that New Jersey, did you mean? We've got Long Island, Michigan, Texas, Missouri, Memphis. Awesome. Good to see everybody. Someone else from Minnesota. We're finally getting some spring today. Okay, so take pictures, observe. The other thing, it's great to look through books and through. So I have these are references that I use. I like to put my reference pictures in these plastic protectors because sometimes I'll actually put paint on them and it can kind of help me match colors. Hi, Mom from Gettysburg. Hey, Joan, glad you're here. Hopefully we don't need ratio help this time, but you're our girl if we do. A few people mentioned, Joan, how helpful that was for them. They were like writing down your ratios. So thanks for that. But anyway, put them in page protectors so then you can actually paint on them directly, just like to try a color. I would caution you, though, against color matching to a printed picture because those colors are not necessarily accurate and you need to take creative license. You don't have to paint exactly what you printed or exactly what you're seeing. We'll kind of do that. I sort of use my photo references as just a guide, a reference. And then if I want to break free from that, that's okay. That's what's going to make my art mine. Unless you're trying to be very literal, then you just don't have to do it exact. So I'm not a painter who's going to do things exact. I want it to be my interpretation. So anyway, this is I think it's Pissarro. Yeah, this is a Pissarro. I like to find ones that have, maybe I'm not painting architecture, but I just want to look at the sky. How did he do the clouds? What were his choices? What kind of colors did he use? I've got some of my own reference photos, and I'm not going to paint this exactly. What I'm looking for is the cloud shape. I'm looking for how it's shaded, and this can kind of give me some ideas for when I'm doing a landscape and I might want to insert a cloud that maybe in a picture I took, a cloud wasn't there. It was a gray day. I didn't like the clouds that were in the picture. Here's another one that I took that just, I was on a walk, took some pictures. And so you can just see the variety of clouds that you can find when you're out and about. And it's fun to start, once you start comparing them, you're like, yeah, there's a lot of options. And I can kind of pick my favorite clouds. Do I like stormy clouds, big white puffy clouds? What do I like? And this is Seago. I love his work, Edward Seago. I've done some studies of his. So this is a Seago painting, and then I've done a few studies of this, but I keep just sort of changing it. But this is sort of an idea of looking to something for inspiration and then taking it in your own direction. But I really love Edward Seago and the way he does clouds. And so anyway, I would suggest having a reference folder and saving reference photos as well as artists that you like. Sometimes what I'll do, like if I'm painting, let's say I'm painting a building and I really love the way he did light and shadow, then I might have my reference picture up of the building that I'm painting. And then I'll have this up next to it so I can use it as sort of a reference to say, okay, these are the choices he made about his shadows. Maybe I'll try that on my painting. So that's just kind of a good way to use reference. You're not painting literally the exact painting, but you can kind of look at it for some ideas. A book I would recommend is Painting Clouds and Skies in Oils. This is, I don't know how you say her last name, but it's Mo. I call her Mo. And I've connected with her on Instagram, and I've encouraged her to do some online workshops. She does teaching and everything, and is obviously a super talented artist. So anyway, this book is great. I would highly recommend it if you're really interested in clouds. And then, okay, so as we're looking at painting clouds, the question would be, when you're painting a landscape, is the subject the clouds? Is it the trees? Like, what's the main focus? What do you want to say with painting? So today we're going to say clouds. That's what we're going to paint mostly. So our horizon line is going to be very, very low. Same thing with this painting. We've got a pretty low horizon line and the focus is the clouds. Also, the land is really far away. All of these trees are really small. I don't have any big trees in the way like I do in this painting. You can see I sort of hinted at clouds back here, but the main focus is the trees. It's not the clouds. So you just want to kind of think through that when you're picking where your horizon line is going to go. What's your painting going to look like? You want to decide what the focus is going to be. And it's okay to have some stronger clouds in it. Like I put some stronger clouds in the church painting because I liked the way it kind of balanced out this whole area. But in the actual inspiration picture, the whole sky was just blue. There weren't any clouds. So I used a few reference pictures and kind of added some clouds in. Okay, so there's just a few kind of preliminary things, and then let's get started painting. Let me get you situated here so you're going to be able to see. And just let me know if you have any questions. I'll get you guys as close as I can here. There we go. Okay. Somebody recommended artist Phil Bob Borman out of Texas. He does workshops if you enjoy clouds. And I'll have a few suggestions of Instagram accounts that I really love. They paint a lot of clouds and I just enjoy following their feed. So I'll share those at the end. And I'm painting on a 6x8 canvas panel. And you can, I would recommend for these doing a 5x7, 6x8, somewhere in that kind of world. If what you have is bigger, that's okay. If you're working on a larger canvas, what you might want to do is just kind of draw an imaginary line down the middle. And like if you have it in landscape, maybe draw a line down the middle and paint one on one side, one on the other side, so that we can complete hopefully 2 paintings. We'll see how quickly we go. So I'm using this is the bushy brush that I've been using the last, for the landscape one. If you have a bushy brush like this, go ahead and use that. I'm using one that's just a little bit bigger just for the sake of time. But this is a natural bristle boar's brush. It's about 1/2 inch. I'm using oils, somebody asked, and I'm going to have my canvas situated portrait, in portrait mode, not landscape mode, because we're going to do a really low horizon line and just focus on the clouds, similar to this painting. Well, actually, I'm going to kind of use this one as my reference. Let's see if I can put it where you guys can see it. There we go. I'll put it right there. So I'm using oils. If you're using acrylics or if you're working on a gessoed surface, I would not suggest toning the canvas unless with acrylics you tone it with water. We're going to do like we did in the first class with the landscape. We're going to tone this canvas first. And basically it's just putting some color on the canvas. So I've taken a little bit of Gamsol. These are it's your solvent, turpentine, mineral spirits. You can see I just have a little wet puddle there. And I'm going to pick up, so let me tell you the colors we're using. I'm assuming you guys were all here for the first one, and you may not have been. And then you're like, I don't know what we're doing. Okay, so let me back up a second. On your palette, you want to have ultramarine blue or some kind of blue, like I would say a cobalt, indigo, any kind of ultramarine, like French ultramarine. Mine's ultramarine blue green shade. So we'll have ultramarine blue, burnt sienna, yellow ochre. Mine is yellow ochre pale, but you could just use plain old yellow ochre. Cadmium yellow medium. Again, you can just use cadmium yellow light, cadmium yellow dark. Whatever you have is okay. You just want a bright yellow. If you have a lemon, that's going to be okay. And then titanium white. So those are the colors. Thanks, Lillian, for asking. So those are our 5 colors. And then, so I'm going to grab the burnt sienna, and you see I'm making kind of a nice little orange, it's very runny, a little puddle. And I'm going to add in a little bit of the ultramarine blue. And because we're working with complementary colors on the color wheel, blue and orange, we're going to end up kind of neutralizing that orange with the blue and just making really like a nice kind of a neutral brown tone. That's what we're looking for. It can be a little bit oranger or a little bit bluer. Your paint color does not have to look exactly like mine. So you see it's kind of this brown. And this does not have to go on in any particular way. This is just about covering the canvas. If your paint looks really dark, like it's very opaque, then you just need to mix a little bit more solvents in. If you're working with acrylic, you can do this same thing with water. And then the thing is, acrylics dry very quickly, so you need to wipe them away quickly. With oils, it's just not the case. So we've covered the whole canvas, and then we're going to take a towel, paper towel. I like to get as a note the Selecta size so that I can use smaller sections. I don't use as much paper towel. And then we're just going to kind of blot this off. Just take some of it away. Okay, can you go back and add to an oil painting once it's dry? Joe, yes, you can. The thing is, you lose those wet edges, so you can't do the same kind of blending unless you add wet paint in. But there are people who work on oil paintings for weeks, months, years, and just keep building up layers over dry layers. The kind of painting I do is called alla prima, and it means it's all in one pass, it's all in one sitting. The only time when I'll break up sittings is when I'm working on something like an animal or a portrait that takes longer, it requires more drawing. And in that case, I'll do the underpainting and the drawing usually in one sitting, and then I'll do the color and some kind of fine tuning of the drawing in the next sitting. I'll do that with architecture too, 'cause it just takes me longer. I'm not as quick with when things need to be more precise. Landscapes are so forgiving because it's like, it's okay if a tree's not there, that was there, that's okay, that's your decision. If somebody's face is like things are in the wrong place, it just doesn't look good. But I say that kind of laughing because like when I went to I have all these other things popping up on Facebook. Not right now, I'm live. But when I went to Paris and saw some of the famous Impressionist paintings, there are some that I'm like, I don't know, I don't think that's really that good. Like that face is not at all. I don't know, it doesn't look very proportionate. So, it's like, it's art, so whatever. Okay, so since this is toned, you know what I'm going to do? And I do this a lot when I'm working on other ones. Since I have a little bit of paint left, I'm going to go ahead and just tone another canvas. I actually need to get a little bit more paint. I started wiping it away. So see, if your paint is looking like this, it's too dry. You need a little bit more Gamsol. So I'm just going to pick up a little bit more. But this one's going to end up being darker than the first one. And that's okay. So if you have two canvases, go ahead and take a minute and tone that second one too. And then we'll have that one ready to go. We're just going to make these very loose studies. I think one of the things I've learned with clouds, for me anyway, for sort of the Impressionist style, is when I start to overthink them, that's when they start, I don't know, they just don't look as good. They look better when I'm kind of not trying as hard. And I did all of these things where I was like trying to model out clouds and draw them three-dimensional and everything. And I feel like my clouds have gotten better just when I'm just observing clouds and not getting bogged down with too much technical stuff. Okay. Oh, I guess I should have kept a little bit of paint on there to draw with. Oops. So I'm getting a little bit of, let's see, can you go back and add a picture to a toned board? Yes, so you can tone. I have a couple here that I toned months ago. So you can tone a whole bunch of boards all at one time, and you can paint either on a freshly toned board or you can paint on one that was toned months ago. It just depends on what you do. The only time when I would say you definitely want the underpainting to be fresh is if you're trying to pull paint back from it. So if you're doing a drawing where you want to really fine tune the values and you want to be able to pull paint off, like I want to be able to get this down to white again, then it's so much easier if it's wet. So like if you want to use a paper towel to kind of, I have a little bit of Gamsol on it to kind of pull out your cloud like that, then you need it to be wet. Do you see how cool? It's like just dabbing it with a paper towel. It's like, then we kind of have a little cloud going already. So this is for those working in oil. This is a paper towel with Gamsol on it. If you're working in acrylics, then I haven't done this in acrylics, so you'd probably have to try to pull it back with some water. Somebody asked, do I make my own substrate? Not in this case. These are panels that I purchased. I get them from Source Tech, and I get canvas and linen panels on birch there. I find they're better than the cardboard panels. They don't bend as much. If I'm using acrylic, oh, so you're using acrylic and it's already dry. That's kind of the downside to acrylic. So I would say don't worry about it. Like, you don't need to do this part. You can just proceed once we start drawing, and that's going to be fine. You'll just kind of add layers over it. Okay, so I'm just sort of blotting out some of the paint there. We'll just kind of roll with it from here. Let me get this big brush put down, and we'll start with, so we've got, like with our other class, we have one bushy brush and one sort of a flat straight brush. So let's start with our flat straight brush, and we'll do just a little bit of initial drawing. So I'm grabbing some burnt sienna and ultramarine blue, and I'm going to grab just a little bit of the Gamsol. I'm just grabbing it out of my little bucket here. Just grabbing a little bit of that with the brush, just pulling it out just to thin this down. And this is the only time, right in the beginning here, this is the only time that we're going to use that solvent until we're ready to clean up. So you can I just keep my lid on mine, and just, if you have a jar or whatever, I'll pull it off, get what I need, put the jar cover right back on, just so it doesn't get fumy in here. So let's do something similar to this. We're just going to kind of, and I have this, this is a picture I took at our church. So I've got a little bit of, I can kind of work off of this one if I want to. So we're going to keep the horizon line really, really low. And we're going to say, maybe we'll put some trees in here that kind of go off into the distance. So we're just going to I'm using this as a reference a little bit, but we're just going to kind of make it up. So I'm just drawing in some little trees, just some happy little trees. And the farther away the trees are, the smaller they are. So just think about that. If your trees are getting really big, then you're going to make them really up close. And we want them to be very far away. We can kind of take this bushy brush that's clean, we haven't used it yet, or kind of wipe it with a paper towel if you used it to tone your canvas, and we can just kind of soften those edges there. We'll maybe make the foreground a little bit darker. And just fluff it out. So we're not too worried about this. This is not the subject of the photo. I mean, of the painting. But we're just kind of getting a little bit of land there. Does that make sense? My father-in-law, he's not a spammer. He's the one who's talking about a llama. He's been asking me to paint him a llama. And I keep telling him I'm going to paint him one that's like 4 feet tall, that he's going to be obligated to hang in his house. But yeah, we're not painting a llama today. Sorry, Mike. Yes, and Stephanie, this is wood backing. It's birch. For our landscape one, I did use, I can't get it. This is a cardboard backed one, and these are fine. They just sometimes get can you see it get like a little warped? So when I'm doing, I like to work on the panels. It's just a little bit sturdier. They're easier to mail. I'm not as worried about them getting bent. But especially if you're just practicing or doing some studies or just starting out, man, I tore through these and I still do. I still use them all the time. So, but if I think I might sell something, I do it on the birch. Okay, so let's get mixing. Everybody good to go on sort of your underpainting here? I'm maybe adding in a little bit of darker sky right there. The cool thing about clouds is it's not like a nose or an eye or even a building where it has to have a particular shape. It can just be, there's so many shapes that clouds can take on. So I think for that reason they're forgiving, but I think for that reason they can also be intimidating. So we're going to start with our sky color. And I've got a little bit of this burnt sienna ultramarine mixture here. So I'm going to go ahead and just start working on that pile. So I'm grabbing a good amount of ultramarine blue there. And I'll mix it all in. So we've got some burnt umber in there, or sorry, burnt sienna. And then I'm going to grab some burnt sienna, probably about a third of what I grabbed for the ultramarine blue. And we'll kind of mix those two together. I think I want a bit more paint, so I'm going to add a little bit more of each. Burnt sienna, ultramarine blue. And then I'm going to kind of get some of this paint off, and we will grab some white because this is a really dark blue. So you can start to judge the color once you get some white in there and start to look at like, okay, this is too dark, so we're going to need more white. And we also need to make some decisions about how blue we want our sky versus gray. Do we want more of a blue-gray sky? If you want to use a palette knife for mixing, you can. I'm just trying to keep things. I mix with a brush a lot, and then my brushes get all caked. But if you want to use a palette knife, you definitely can. The advantage to that is it does help you sort of get everything in a nicer pile instead of spread all out. So if you have a palette knife from doing your color charts, you can always use that. All right, so we've got kind of a mid-tone blue. I feel like this is a little bit, it's a little dark. So I'm going to add some more white. And this is just for this particular sky for me. I just want it to be a little bit lighter. So we've got a nice kind of medium blue, and I like to add yellow to my skies. So we've got a nice kind of blue-gray. What colors am I using at the moment? So so far this pile is just ultramarine blue and burnt sienna. Probably about a 2-to-1 ratio or 2-to-1/2 ratio. I guess that'd be 3-to-1 ratio. So I'm going to add in a little bit of yellow ochre. This is yellow ochre pale. And I'm going to add that in to the sky. And if you're like, man, I thought we were going to paint, not just be sitting here mixing paint. I felt like I was spending a lot of time mixing paint when I first started. And I had read that like John Singer Sargent was known for spending he spent more time on his palette than he did on the canvas. And I've heard that about other artists as well. But getting your colors right is such an important step. And if you remember from our other landscape painting, we went back to this kind of this base color that we started with and used it quite a lot. So we want to get this, we'll use this to mix some of our greens as well. So I put in some more white. I'm going to add in some more ultramarine blue, or sorry, ultramarine, yellow ochre pale, just to get a nice sky color. And I think we're getting there. I'm going to go ahead and put this on and see what it looks like for me. Getting a paper towel. So how are you guys doing? You with me at the moment? I know you're painting, so you're not typing, but this group's been a little quiet so far. So somebody asked, would this be a color close to Bice? And it's close, it's not quite as intense. So here's Bice, and there's the color I just mixed. So usually with Bice, I'll still mix in a little bit of burnt sienna and white. I usually don't use it straight. So this color Bice, it's like my favorite. I love it. It's a convenience color. So it's something it's already mixed with some white. It's not a pure pigment like an ultramarine blue. It's made by Vasari, and you have to place $100 minimum, and the paints are not cheap. So I would only kind of venture there if you're sure you really want to pursue oil painting and want to make that investment. Otherwise, you can mix colors, a color very similar to Bice or almost exactly like Bice with the colors that we have. So, all right, and Joan is busy painting, so great. She says hers looks like an old photograph at this point already. So that's good. Yeah, you kind of want it to have that sepia tone. Okay, so let's give this sky color a try. So I think it's still a little bit dark for me. So I'm going to grab in more white, and I'm going to kind of mix it in here. Just keep grabbing more white. And if you found a sky color that you're already like, nope, I'm good, this is what I wanted, then you just go ahead and go with it. All right. So I added a little more white, and I'm happy with that. And I'm just going to paint this top row. And I might leave a little space for a little bit of wispy clouds up here. So the thing with painting clouds, when I first started painting, I would paint the sky blue, and then I would add clouds in on top of that. And what happens then is you get these very muddy, undefined clouds. It's kind of, especially with oil, you have paint like sliding all around. And so what I found that is really much better to do is paint the clouds completely separate from the sky. So you're not painting them on top of the sky. You're painting them. And then painting the sky around them. So that's what we'll do. Natalie finally got her paints in Gamsol today. Yes, I know so many people have been waiting. Okay, Linda's just joining in to watch. So welcome, Linda. I'm glad you're joining us and just hanging out. So Stephanie, yours is more grayish than blue. You can always add then a little bit more ultramarine, a little bit more white to make it more blue. Mine's a gray blue, definitely. But if you're feeling like it's too gray, then add a little more blue to it and just tweak that color. Okay, so I've added some sky, and I'm happy with the sky color. And now I'm gonna leave the sky alone, and I'm gonna start working on the cloud, and then I'll bring the sky to meet the cloud. Okay. All right, let's see. Yep, Robin says she's just watching today too. And Melinda's just watching. So glad you guys are joining us. All right, so let's start with the clouds. And we'll start with, I'll kind of use this cloud here as a model, the one that I have up here. So we're gonna do some darker gray on one side, and then we're going to start to add some white on top of that. So we'll take this kind of sky color that we have. Some of it I left a little bit darker. And if you didn't, that's okay. Just add a little bit more ultramarine blue and a little more burnt sienna just to darken it up a bit. So Joan, she's asking, is this a thick layer over the wash? Yeah, I think it's pretty thick. It's okay if you're that's going to be a personal choice. There's no right or wrong. Some people paint very thin, fine layers. Other people do very thick, heavy brush strokes. It's going to be up to you. What is, I think, kind of a common technique is to, with darker colors, paint them thinner and lighter. And then as you get lighter and lighter, those strokes get heavier, the paint gets thicker. And that is what we'll do at the very end here. Let me show you how the white paint, you can see it. The white paint here, you can see, is the thickest. And then the sky is a little bit thinner. Can you guys see that? So we'll do that. And that kind of brings the whites out. It kind of makes them leap out a little bit. So I'm pulling some of this. It's our same sky mixture, but a little bit darker. I'm going to add a little bit more ultramarine blue and add a little bit more burnt sienna and to have it be a little bit of a darker gray. And we'll we're adding this to what will be the underside of our clouds. And it's a little bit blue, so I'm going to add a little bit more a little bit more burnt sienna to gray it out even a little bit more. So if you put a color down and you're like, not quite right, then that's okay. And we're only going to do a little bit of this. I don't want a ton of really dark edges of our cloud. And maybe, I don't know, we'll kind of play with it. I'll put a little bit there too, and we'll see how that looks. This is the part of the painting where people are like, what are you doing? Like, it doesn't, you just have to be like, I know where I'm going. I'm heading in a direction. Let's add a little bit more burnt sienna to this and a little yellow ochre just to kind of warm up this gray. And then we'll add some of this just to add a little dimension to the darks. And we'll take the same color that we're working in, this kind of warm gray, and let's make it a little lighter with some white and a little yellow ochre. We'll kind of add that to sort of the tops of this, just to add in a little bit more, again, a little more dimension. And we're going to say that the light is coming from this way. So we're going to have the dark on this side of the clouds, and it's going to get lighter as we get closer to the light. It's looking a little cloudish, right? Is the darkest value or mid-tone? Jean, I don't know if I'm using the bushy brush, the exact name of the bushy brush. This is a number 4 Rosemary & Company long filbert. And the number that's printed on it is S as in Sam, ER 278. Hold it up right there if you want to do a screenshot. You can get it from Rosemary & Company in the UK, or you can find one of their US distributors. So that's the bushy brush that I'm using. And this is going to be one of our darker values, but this is still a mid-tone. If we look at our value, I got it clipped and I got a palette on my lap. If we look at our value chart so if you've done your color charts, you can kind of see what's your darkest dark. So we are definitely in the mid-tone range. We're not up here where it's really, really dark. So if you're finding it's really, really dark, clouds usually don't get that color unless it's like nighttime or there's a tornado coming. So you don't want to get quite that dark. So we're at a mid-tone still here. We'll maybe kind of carry that off the page there. Okay. So we're going to start to make this pile lighter. This is kind of our warm gray color that we mixed for the clouds. So we're going to add a lot of white to it. And let's add some yellow ochre. So we've got kind of it's just a warm off-white is what we've got here with a kind of a warm gray off-white. And we're going to start to shape our clouds with it. So I'm finding mine looks a little blue. So I'm going to add even more ultramarine, yellow ochre to make it look a little warmer. And I'll get some more white. So if you'll see, we use a lot of white, especially when you're doing skies. Okay. So I like that better. It's a little warmer. And I'm just let's make a little cloud shape here. And we're not going to take it right up to our sky. We're going to we're going to work the sky, make the sky go closer to that. Fun things about clouds, you can have like little random pieces that kind of come off of it. And we can kind of mix this color into that darker one if we want to. Don't mix it too much. Don't completely lose your darks. And then we're going to imagine maybe this cloud is a little further back. I find I'm much more nervous painting when I'm doing this. When I'm just by myself painting, I'm much more like, I don't know, I'm relaxed. I'm afraid I'm going to mess up for you guys, lead you guys astray or something. Okay, so I'm kind of mixing out that dark a little bit. And I'm just adding this white. Still these clouds. Okay, now the cool thing about this stage is if we want to reshape the clouds at all, then we certainly can once we start adding the sky in. So if we realize like, that cloud is shaped a little funny, I don't know if I like how it looks, then we can reshape it with the way that we're doing the clouds. Okay, so Judy says she can't keep up. All right, what do you need, Judy? Well, you're like, I can't tell you right now. I'm painting. I'm going to stop a second and I'll show you guys a bit of a close-up of what it's looking like, so that you have a second. So it's not super neat. Don't obsess too much. Okay. And remember, you can always go back and you can watch this again, try it again. So I've said this before, this is like a no stress place. This is like, we're just gonna have fun. Whatever happens, happens. So, okay. So we're gonna go back to this sky color that we have here. and start kind of, oh, you know, one thing I did decide, we'll put some little wispy clouds up here too. We kind of have that going on in this picture. There's some little wispy clouds up top. So we'll add those in. So this is just that same kind of off-white cloud color that I was using. We're not going to use any of the dark, and we're just going to put just a little bit of white wispies that we're going to mix in more with the sky color. So this is a sky color now that I'm adding, and I'm shaping it around the cloud. Okay. Let me show you what that looks like. So we've just got just a little wispy cloud up there. Joe, if nothing's clear at all, yeah, my reception on the computer is okay. So is everybody else seeing clearly? Hopefully it's not on my end. What I'm seeing looks clear in my preview. So Judy, if your clouds are too blue, Marianne says it's clear for her, so it may be something on your end, Joe. Judy, if your clouds are too blue, then add a little bit of burnt sienna, a little bit more yellow ochre, and then add some more white. And you can paint right over what you were just painting. If anytime you need to make an adjustment, or you can take a paper towel and wipe something away. If you're like, I'm not super happy with that, take the paper towel, wipe some of the paint away, just like that, and then paint over it again. Okay, so I'm getting a lot of it. Looks good. Sometimes it's clear, sometimes it's blurry. So hopefully on the playback, everything will be clear. So I'm taking my sky color here, and I'm going to start to work around this cloud. Now, a thing about the sky is that it's darker at the top, and it gets lighter and warmer as you get closer to the horizon. So some people said it's a little blurry. So let me just make sure there's no smudge on my screen. There you go. Okay, maybe that'll help. All right. Yeah, Marianne said the internet is really busy right now, and I think that is the case. You've got kids in school and everything. All right, so we've got this sky color, and since we're sort of working now, I think I'll go around this cloud. So this is where you can shape your cloud a little further. If you weren't like super happy with the shape, you can kind of, and you can kind of put a little more like pieces of the sky in there. It's where you can kind of shape it. Don't mix into your cloud though too much, if that makes sense. You don't want to kind of muddy that. And it's okay if a little bit of your underpainting is showing. That's kind of cool. It's a cool effect when you see a little bit of the underpainting showing. Kind of adds a little warmth. Okay, and I'm going to hit in right here. And sometimes you have to step back from your clouds and be like, ooh, that looks really strange. Laura, what color am I using right now? This is a mix of ultramarine blue, mostly, some burnt sienna, some yellow ochre, and titanium white mixed together to make kind of a blue-gray. So we've worked in this part of the sky, and we're kind of done with that. One thing that you can do at this point before you totally mix and lose this color is you can paint your edges. This particular panel is pretty thick. It's like a 1/4 inch thick. So if you paint your edges, then if you don't have a frame for it, you can just lean it up against a bookshelf or something. Kind of gives you more options. So since we're moving closer to the horizon, we want to get a little lighter, which is with white. And we want to get a little bit warmer, which is with a little bit more yellow ochre pale. or yellow ochre, whatever you have. And then we'll keep going with our sky. It's getting a little lighter now. Okay, we're just going to kind of fill the sky in here. And I tend to use like a bunch of little strokes, kind of depositing the paint as I go. If you want to use, like, some people use like really broad strokes like that. I tend to it's just my style. I make a bunch of smaller strokes. There we go. And we're going to continue with that same sky color and fill in these holes. Now, one thing I want to make sure is that this is lighter than that dark sky color. So I'm going to add in a little bit more white and a little bit more yellow ochre pale so that this color is distinguishable. One thing that really helped me out with color and also with drawing is looking at things like, is this lighter or darker? Is this bigger or smaller? And looking at those things really helped me improve my drawings, because I realized, like, oh, this is actually smaller than that, and I drew it bigger than that because in my mind that's kind of how I was imagining it. It's not really what I was seeing. So when you're working on color, should this be lighter or darker, then it helps a lot. Like in this place, the sky is darker than the cloud, but in this place, the sky is lighter than the cloud. So kind of paying attention to things in comparison can really help. So somebody asked the base color that I was using. The base color is ultramarine blue, burnt sienna, titanium white, and yellow ochre pale. And I'm going to kind of soften the bottom of that cloud a little bit. And then okay, this is still sky color here that we're shaping around this kind of this bottom cloud. Okay, and then we want the sky to keep getting lighter, so we're going to add more titanium white to the sky color. And we want it to get warmer, so we're going to add a little bit more yellow ochre pale. And then we're going to keep going. Now, because I'm going to actually add a little bit of darker sky around this cloud here, because I want the cloud to pop. So I pulled a little bit of the darker sky color. Which you do see that sometimes, these sort of little, like a dark patch of sky. All right, we're going to go back to the lighter color now, though. So we've got this contrast against this darker color. Okay, and I kind of liked that little bit of darker color, so I'm going to add a little bit more. Just a little variation in the sky around some of the lighter parts, maybe. The nice thing about oils is you can always, if you're like, you want kind of a different brush stroke pattern, you can go back and kind of continue to manipulate it till you're happy with where you are. And kind of blend a little bit more. The thing with oil painting, though, is you don't want to blend things to oblivion. You want to make sure that you keep some separate and distinct lines. Do I have this written down somewhere? What part? This is this is totally Sonia. If you're just joining us, a few like 3 weeks ago, I'm like, hey, I'll do some free oil painting classes while we're all just sitting at home. And I was in the middle of putting together a course for beginners that would have a video and printables to go with it and everything. I'm like, you know what? We're just gonna do this. Um, so someone said, how can I, without destroying my number 4 Eclipse filbert, make it a little bushier and worn like yours so I can get the same effect? I would say even just getting it just needs to be, this is a brush I've used like to death, which is why I think it's all bushy and splayed. So you can use, even just get a cheap brush that then you don't mind smushing, and you want it to be kind of a brush that's like this. It looks like an ugly brush. That's what you want, is a little ugly brush for this. Okay, so we've gotten down to the bottom, and what I want to do is have clouds on the horizon. They're not going to be as defined as these clouds, but I'm going to go back to our cloud color. We'll add maybe a little bit more yellow ochre in. We need a bit more white, and maybe even a little bit more yellow ochre so they're nice and warm. And we'll put, oh, not warm enough. See, something will look warm on your palette. Like it'll look, I'll be mixing and I'm like, it's yellow. It looks yellow. I don't want it yellow. But then you put it on and in relation to everything, it does not look yellow. It just looks like a nice warm white. So sometimes, like if you think, it just can sometimes take a couple of tries, and that's okay. Or more than a couple can take some tries. So I'm adding some more white to this too, even. And we're just going to have these be low clouds on the horizon. Don't really have much of a defined shape because they're way off in the distance. I'm going to put a little bit more white in there. And these clouds are a little like flatter and lower. We're doing kind of longer, thinner strokes back here to have these clouds off in the distance. And then I think I'm going to add just a little bit of a blue sky under, kind of a very greenish blue sky. Might add in just a little bit. Just where the sky is peeking through under the clouds. And then I'm going to kind of blend that down to the horizon. Okay. How's everybody doing? I just got an LOL. Does that mean like lost? Totally lost. I'm just adding in a little bit more sky color just to sort of give a little bit more shape to those clouds. Okay. And then the last thing that we're going to do with these clouds is add in just some really bright highlights. So grab some titanium white and put it in a new pile. And we're going to add just a teeny touch, not like that, just a teeny little touch of cadmium yellow. You still want it to look like a white, not a bright yellow. So if it's bright yellow, you've added too much yellow. Just add a little more white. And we're going to add just to the side where the light is coming from, so our light's coming from here, we're going to add just some highlights. And this is the kind of, this is when you just want to touch the paint on and walk away. Don't like do a ton of blending it in, just sort of put it on and leave it alone. And you don't have to do it on every single one or every single place. We're just kind of touching the tips. This is where the light is just catching the clouds and reflecting off, and we want to just have a little bit of brightness. And if you're finding that you're adding this and it's not really having that effect or showing up, then the white of your clouds might have been too white to begin with. So these are the colors I was using for my clouds, and then this is the bright white. So like we talked about in the landscape, you've got to save your whitest white for kind of the very end. Otherwise, you don't have anywhere to go. And clouds, even though we think of them as white, really aren't white. They're usually gray, blue, yellow. They really have a lot more color than just white. And you can, even if you're finding like, I feel like it's really cold, I tend to paint very cool. All of my paintings are really cool because I like cool colors. But if you're feeling like they're a little cool, then you can add a little bit more yellow ochre to some white. Maybe mix in a touch of your sky color and add in a little bit of yellow spots. A little bit more. I mean, we have some yellow in here, but you can always make your clouds warmer. You can add in pinks and all purples and make it more colorful. And that's just sort of that's an artistic choice. I keep my colors pretty cool. And that's just because that's kind of the palette I like. But when I've read that people respond to warmer paintings more than cooler paintings. Angela, don't worry about how much paint you have. I'll show you a few things you can do with that paint. We'll do that. I don't think we're going to have time for a second cloud study, but I can show you a few ideas. Maybe we could do like a super quick study just to show how to kind of work out some of your ideas. Okay, so let's finish up our land real quick. So I just keep wiping my brush and to get off if I have too much paint on there before I go to the next thing. So we're gonna go to the land now. So let's, we're gonna use some of the colors that we have. So we're gonna use this sort of dark blue that we have on here, and let's make it a little darker with some, what's the name of this color? Ultramarine blue. There we go. And some burnt sienna. Blue is pretty much always going to make a color darker. And we don't want these trees to be, remember how dark we made our trees in the landscape? We don't want them to be that dark because these are trees that are way off in the distance. We're going to add some yellow ochre pale to make this more of a green. But these are just like distant trees. That's maybe too blue. So I'm going to add in a little more yellow ochre pale, a little more burnt sienna. And now it's too brown. A little bit ultramarine blue. So it's just, it's just playing. Okay, that's a little better. Not as blue. Okay. So I'm still with my bushy brush here, and I'm just putting in some distant trees. One thing that is true too with the distant horizon is that usually the horizon is, especially if it's far off, is just kind of fuzzy. Like it's not this, so it doesn't have to be, it actually looks pretty unnatural if it's this super clean line. You want it to be kind of this, it's just a little fuzzy. It's stuff that's way, way off. And another tendency too is to make this stuff that's in the distance too big. You make it, it's just too big. So what I try to do is work from the back And these trees are a little bigger than I want them. So in my next row, I can kind of cover up the bottom of those and make them a little bit smaller. But everybody has that tendency, I think, to have things bigger than they are, just because we're focusing on them. So Stephanie, what I'm mixing right now, this was ultramarine blue, burnt sienna, a little bit of yellow ochre, titanium white. It was that gray that we started with for the sky. From that color, I've used that as a base for mixing the cloud color, the horizon, and now I pulled it off in another direction to make the trees. Okay. Yeah, and Colleen says I actually like the grass that warm color. So if you want, let's do that. Let's make it a nice warm color. So let's do like a I still have a little bit of this color on my brush, and that's okay. We'll take some yellow ochre pale, we'll take some burnt sienna, and we'll take some titanium white. Let's make this middle ground really light, like there's some sun peeking through. Some more more yellow ochre and more white. So we've got kind of a wheat color here. I tend to do greens usually, and then we're just gonna just make like a little field. I'm still working with my bushy brush here, but I'm gonna move shortly to my brush that's a little bit straighter. Okay, so we're gonna kind of make a little, like this is a field in the back. And if you get some of your blue mixed in, like that's okay. Just kind of go back and get your color and go over it a little bit thicker. Okay, and then in the foreground, what should we do? Maybe we'll do, maybe we'll do a little bit of burnt sienna, and we'll even just grab a little bit of this, mix that in. Kind of make just a little brown stone kind of color. I don't like that. Okay, we'll do a green. So we'll do ultramarine blue, yellow ochre pale, and I'm going to pull a little bit more ultramarine blue and then maybe a little bit of cadmium yellow. Make it a little bit of a brighter green. Okay, and then we'll put that in as the foreground. So then what I'd like to do is, I think I might add a little bit of even a darker shadow with a little bit of ultramarine blue and burnt sienna added to that color. Make a darker green, and we'll do have it a little bit darker down here. Just to add a little bit of variation. And then I'm going to come in with my, this is my softer brush here, or my straighter brush. This is an ivory. It's an ivory long flat. And let's add a little bit of a brighter, kind of a sunspot in this field. So I'm going to our cloud color, and I just added a little bit of cadmium yellow. And I'm just gonna kind of add in a little bit of kind of sunshine along the horizon. And this is something that you can put some texture down here. I mean, there's just so many. It's not like a right or wrong way. I probably, like, if I was doing this on my own, I would kind of fiddle with the base a little bit more, but we're focusing on clouds, so I'm not gonna fiddle with this too much. I'm just adding a little more like blue in, just, I don't know, maybe there's some little bushes there or something. I don't know. I'm just kind of playing with it. But anyway, there you have the idea. Let me pull this a little closer. And so I would, while I have the paint on the palette, I would go ahead and paint sides. Of course, I'm going to regret this because I'm going to be picking it up in a minute. Okay. So let me show you what we've got here. There we go. And that's just kind of one way to paint clouds. I am going to, let's do like a super quick, for people who are like, I feel lost. Let's just do like a super quick cloud study, like one big cloud back on the horizon. Let's just do that. So we're going to use up the paint that we have on here. I'm just going to use the same sky color. We're not even going to draw. I might even go to a bigger brush. So for people who just want to paint, let's just do it. These can be fun, and I do these sometimes. So I'm going to kind of carve out a cloud shape here. I'm not going to worry as much about graduating my sky. I'm just going to kind of use what I have. And then I'm going to go to, let's say, this lighter blue. I'm going to add in more white. Let's start shaping out a cloud. I'm going to go, I have this warmer pile here. So I'm going to warm that up with some yellow ochre. So I've got kind of a more of a bluer, cooler pile. And let's put this warmer up around. So we're not doing our whitest white. We're just kind of, and we're also not touching the sky yet. And then under it, I'm going to do a little bit of, I think I'm going to add some cadmium yellow in and make it a real turquoise sky. And then I'm going to kind of blend this in. Maybe add a little bit of a darker blue. This is just fun. This is just like a nope. I am not going to be pressured. I am just going to have fun and paint some clouds. Okay, so now at this point, I'm going to go ahead and bring the sky in and kind of blend those two together. And this is where you can kind of shape your cloud. And again, sometimes you have to kind of take a step back and be like, I don't know about that shape, or, no, that looks good. Kind of flatten off the top of that cloud a bit. Just rubbing a little bit more sky color under there. Okay, and then we'll just do a little bit of You just entered what I had on my brush and nothing came up. Oh, do you mean the numbers? I'll try to find the exact one. I'm pretty sure it's the Eclipse brush. And then I'm just going to use some leftover green that I have on my palette. And we'll just kind of do a little very simple land kind of. This is just a little study. This is like no pressure. This is great to do on paper or on those little canvas panels. Just to kind of, I'm mixing a green with ultramarine blue and burnt sienna. I'm sorry, ultramarine blue and cadmium yellow. So, and then I'm mixing in just a little, this is just kind of like, let's just use what's left on the palette and not stress. Okay. And then we'll just kind of mix the sky down, maybe letting it get a little bit lighter and a little greener. Maybe do a little white on the horizon. And there's just like a super quick little cloud study. And then we can do the same thing with the white. Put some white and cadmium yellow and then kind of put it on the edge there where the light's coming from. That's a good way to get little like wispies, is sort of put your brush down and pull it away. You can get kind of where, you know, clouds get sort of pulled away. So let me show you a close up of that. Just a super quick little cloud study there. Yeah, like Joan said, it's just super quick. And this is kind of a way, like, what I would suggest doing is like setting a timer and say like, okay, I'm going to do 4 of these in 30 minutes. And when you do that, you just don't overthink it. You just start to put color down and just start to see what works. And that's how you discover so many things. And you kind of get out of the, oh, I'm messing it up, I'm not doing it right. You just get out of that because you're just working against the clock. And that was one of the best things I did, I think, early on, was set some timers and force myself to be quick. And so I wasn't focused on, you know, making everything just right. So with this leftover paint, for someone who was concerned about how much paint they had, what I do is I pull all of this paint together in a pile and mix it together, and then I put it over here. This is kind of my little leftover paint pile, and I have all kinds of, usually they're greens or grays or blues that I can pull from, and I'll use them next time. And what I'll do also is I'll use a palette knife, because I kind of mutilated my yellow ochre pale here. So I'll pull out all of like the dirty parts of them and mix that into the pile as well. The other thing you can do is use it to make some little color charts. So back behind me here, all of those back there, I used to make just little, I'd pull all my leftover paint and make little color charts. And I've started making them on linen, just my leftover palettes, and they're kind of fun to look at. So yeah, Joan, I did that in about 5 minutes. But yeah, set some timers and do a bunch of clouds and just kind of see where that takes you. I think it's a fun exercise. So some artists who I love on Instagram, I'm just going to give you three. One is Erin Spencer Art. That's her Instagram handle. It's ERIN Spencer, SPENCER Art. She does amazing clouds. I love her clouds. Megan Gray Arts, MEGANGRAY Arts. She does amazing clouds as well. They both use oil. And then Lauren Brandy Art, LAUREN Art. She does clouds in oil, but she also uses gouache, and she does just amazing work in gouache. So if you're using that, she'd be a good person to take a look at. And I actually spoke to Megan last week and asked if she would be interested in doing an Instagram live together where we paint clouds, and she can kind of teach me some of her techniques and I can let her know what I do. So we're going to be doing that next week. We haven't picked a day yet, but we'll pick a day. And so if you want to work on clouds and then come join us on Instagram Live, you can paint clouds with us again. So that'd be a fun thing to practice. And so McCall Wells Freeman asked, what brand of paints do I prefer? Most of mine are either Winsor and Newton artist oils or Gamblin. And I use the Gamblin artist oils also. They're inexpensive relatively, and I like their colors. Winsor and Newton, I like their, especially like their alizarin is really nice, and it's really like a jewel tone. It's not flat. Some alizarins I've tried are really flat. I like their ultramarine blue a lot. They're just very just very glossy, rich colors, and I really like that for oils. And so Kathy's excited about more clouds. Hi, Rose in Italy. I'm so glad you joined us. And the last thing I wanted to share is I think next week we will do index cards. So the reason why I thought these would be fun is we don't do any underpainting. They're pretty quick. And this is a way that you can paint on pretty much anything you have. Basically, you don't have to have an index card, or you can get an index card. You can order some online. You can just use a piece of stock paper, use old Christmas cards, like any heavy paper, cardboard. The best thing is to put a coat of gesso on. So this is acrylic gesso. You can order it from all kinds of art supply stores. If you are local to a Michael's or Joann's that's doing a curbside pickup, you can do curbside pickup to get gesso. And I will give some instructions in my post on Monday when I post this video. But we'll go ahead and do these, an index card painting. We'll do a landscape also, but these are just kind of fun. So Stephanie, the purpose of an underpainting is it adds a tone to the canvas. It kind of makes it a mid-tone instead of a white, which it's easier to judge colors against. It also, for people who are scared of a white canvas, it kind of gets you past that. And it can also be used to do a full value drawing, a full underpainting. And so it gives you a chance to draw out and sort of conceptualize the painting before you just go for it. Robin, craft paper would be fine as long as it's kind of thick craft paper, not like craft wrapping paper. But yeah, craft paper would be fine. And you can paint directly on craft paper. I do that without any gesso. So if you don't have gesso and all you have is some craft paper, that'll be exactly fine as well. And surprisingly, the oil doesn't bleed too much through it. You could do this with acrylics too, gouache, of course. You could use, or you could use like a watercolor paper. That would be okay. And Vicki, you're still lost since you're using acrylic. I know. I would suggest finding people who are teaching acrylic. Since I'm teaching oil, it is a bit different. I know. I've used acrylics a lot, but it's been in mural painting and decorative painting on furniture, not canvas painting. So for me, they're just I put them in two different compartments. So, All right. Well, everybody take care, stay well and healthy. And I hope you have a great weekend. And I hope this has been a bright spot for you during the week. So I'll be putting this post up on my blog on Monday, along with links to the books I shared, Instagram accounts I like for clouds, and I'll share details about what we're going to be doing next week. So see you all later.